Brother crashed my car and refused to pay. Said it's just a car. I reported it stolen, got him arrested, and then bought the tow yard where it was held. He couldn't afford to get it back. Let me start by saying this, I never thought I'd be that guy. You know, the one who escalates a family issue into full-blown chaos. But here we are, and honestly, I don't regret a thing. I'm Henrik, Rick to most people, and I'm 48. I live in a small town just outside Nashville, Tennessee. My life isn't glamorous, but I've worked hard for what I have. I'm a mechanic by trade, and I like to think I'm pretty good at it. Over the years, I've saved up enough to buy a little house, keep myself comfortable, and pour my free time into my passion, cars. Specifically, my dream car, a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda. Plum crazy purple. 426 ME. Everything about her was perfect. I spent years and more money than I care to admit restoring her, piece by piece. That car wasn't just a car. It was my escape. My reward for all the long hours and busted knuckles. When life got hard, and it got real hard sometimes, I'd just go to the garage, turn on some music, and lose myself in the work. That car kept me sane. But there's someone who never understood that. My younger brother, Castor. If you've ever had a sibling who could mess up anything just by being around, you'll get what I mean. Castor is 2 years younger than me, and we've always been very different. Where I worked my way up, Castor coasted. Jobs? He couldn't keep them. Bills? He'd conveniently forget to pay. Responsibilities? Forget it. Our mom spoiled him rotten, always making excuses for his screw-ups. Rick, he just needs a little help, she'd say. Rick, he's going through a tough time. Rick, you've got to be patient. I tried. I really did. But patience has a limit, and Castor burned through mine years ago. Every time I lent him money, I knew I'd never see it again. Every time I helped him out of a jam, he found a way to get himself into a bigger one. I started keeping my distance. Less contact, fewer chances for him to drag me into his messes. But Castor doesn't know how to take no for an answer. That's how this whole disaster started. It was a Saturday afternoon when Castor showed up at my house. I wasn't expecting him, but I should have known something was up when I saw his beat-up Honda coughing smoke in my driveway. He walked straight into my garage without knocking, like he always does, and there it was, the Barracuda, sitting under the lights. I was polishing the hood when he came in. Man, he said, letting out a low whistle. You really went all out on this thing, huh? It's not just a thing, I replied, my voice tight. She's a classic. Castor walked around the car, looking it over like he was a buyer at an auction. How much you think this thing's worth now? 50? 60 grand? I didn't answer. I didn't feel like explaining that the Barracuda wasn't about the money. It was about the years of work, the weekends spent hunting down rare parts, the late nights I spent sanding and painting and tweaking until she was just right. Hey, Castor said, leaning against the workbench like he owned the place. Mind if I borrow it? I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. You've got to be kidding me. No, seriously, he said. My car's acting up again, and I've got a date tonight. I can't roll up in that piece of junk. He motioned to his Honda, which honestly looked like it might fall apart if the wind blew too hard. You're out of your mind, I said. The answer's no. Why not? He whined. It's just one night. You don't even drive this thing that much. It just sits here collecting dust. That was it. I was done being polite. Because I don't trust you, I snapped. You've wrecked every car you've ever had. You think I'm going to let you take this one? Not a chance. He rolled his eyes, like I was being unreasonable. Dude, it's just a car. No, I said, my voice like steel. It's not. And you're not taking it. That should have been the end of it. Castor muttered something under his breath, grabbed a beer from my fridge without asking, as usual, and left. I thought that was that. I thought he'd finally gotten the message. I was wrong. The next morning, I walked into the garage, and my heart stopped. The Barracuda was gone. At first, I thought maybe I'd forgotten to lock the garage door. Maybe someone had broken in during the night. But then I noticed something else, the spare keys were missing. The ones I kept hidden in a drawer in my workbench. My stomach dropped. I knew. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew. There was only one person who'd pull something like this. I called Castor, my hands shaking as I punched in his number. He didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. Then I texted him. Me, where's my car? No response. I must have called him 20 times before he finally answered. When he did, his voice was casual, like nothing had happened. Hey, Rick. What's up? Don't play dumb with me, I said, barely holding back my anger. Where's my car? Oh, the Barracuda? He said, like we were talking about a pair of old sneakers. Relax, man. I just took it out for a spin. I'll bring it back later. You what? I yelled. You stole my car? Stole? He said, laughing. Come on, Rick. It's not stealing. We're family. Besides, you weren't using it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Castor, if you don't bring it back right now. Chill out, he interrupted. It's just a car. You're acting like I burned your house down or something. I'll bring it back tonight. I was seeing red. But before I could say anything else, he hung up on me. I spent the entire day pacing the house, seething with anger. Every time I thought about Castor behind the wheel of my car, it felt like a punch to the gut. He didn't care about the time, effort, or money I'd poured into that Barracuda. To him, it was just a shiny toy he could show off to whoever he was trying to impress. By nightfall, the car still wasn't back. I called Castor again. This time, he didn't even bother to answer. I left him a voicemail full of words I won't repeat here and told him he had until morning to bring the car back. Spoiler alert, he didn't. The next day, I started calling around town, hoping someone had seen the car. It wasn't hard to track it down. A buddy of mine who works at a tow yard called me, saying he'd seen a purple Barracuda come in after a wreck. My heart sank. I rushed over to the lot, praying it wasn't as bad as I feared. It was worse. The car was mangled. The front end was smashed in, the hood crumpled like tin foil. The driver's side door was hanging off, and the windshield was cracked like a spider web. My stomach churned as I stood there, staring at the wreckage. All that work. All that love. Destroyed. But the real kicker? Castor wasn't even there. The tow truck driver told me he'd abandoned the car on the side of the highway after the accident. No note. No call. Nothing. He just walked away like it wasn't his problem. That's when something inside me snapped. I was done. Done being the nice brother, done cleaning up Castor's messes, done letting him walk all over me. He thought it was just a car? Fine. I'd make sure he paid for every single piece of it. I filed a police report the same day, reporting the car as stolen. Yes, I knew Castor had taken it, but as far as I was concerned, he had stolen it. I never gave him permission, and he had no right to take it. I also gave the police his name and address, along with the tow yard's location, to make sure everything was documented. Later that evening, I got a call from Castor. Finally. Hey, Rick, he said, sounding sheepish. I heard you filed a report on the car? You mean the car you stole and wrecked? I shot back. Come on, man, he whined. You didn't have to get the cops involved. It's just a car. I lost it. It's not just a car, Castor. It's my property. And you're going to pay for every damn penny of the damage. Oh, come on, he said, his tone shifting to that smug, dismissive attitude he always pulled. You've got insurance. You'll be fine. I hung up on him. I wasn't wasting any more words on someone who clearly didn't care about the destruction he caused. The next day, Castor was arrested. Turns out, driving a stolen car, wrecking it, and abandoning it on the side of the highway isn't something the cops take lightly. He called me from jail, begging me to drop the charges. Rick, please, he said, his voice trembling. You can't do this to me. We're family. We were family the moment you stole from me, I said coldly. Figure it out. He ended up sitting in jail for a few days until our mom bailed him out. She called me after, furious. How could you do this to your brother? She demanded. How could he steal from me and destroy something I spent years building? I shot back. This isn't on me. It's on him. She tried to guilt me, but I wasn't budging. Castor needed to learn that actions have consequences, and if my mom wanted to coddle him, that was on her. But I wasn't done yet. I found out the tow yard where the car was being held was planning to auction it off to cover the fees. It broke my heart to think of my car being sold for scraps, so I made a move that would really twist the knife. I went to the tow yard owner, my buddy who'd called me in the first place, and made him an offer. I bought the entire yard. Yep. I bought the business outright. It wasn't cheap, but I had some savings and a solid credit line. And now, the Barracuda was mine again, even if she was in pieces. But the revenge didn't stop there. You see, Castor didn't realize that when you abandon a car at a tow yard, you're responsible for the storage fees. I made sure those fees racked up every single day. By the time Castor realized what was happening, he owed thousands of dollars. He called me, furious. Rick, you've got to waive the fees, he shouted. This is insane. No, I said simply. You wrecked it, you pay for it. I can't afford this, he yelled. Not my problem, I said and hung up. Eventually, he tried to come up with the money, but it wasn't enough. He ended up having to sell his own junker of a car just to cover part of the debt. And when he couldn't pay the rest, I had the legal right to keep the Barracuda. I didn't stop there. With the Barracuda back in my hands, I decided to rebuild her. I poured every bit of my anger and determination into making her better than before. It took months, but when I finally rolled her out of the garage, she was a masterpiece again. As for Castor? He doesn't speak to me anymore. He moved out of town a few months after everything went down, and honestly, I'm fine with that. He burned every bridge, and I made sure he understood that you don't mess with something that doesn't belong to you, especially when it's your brother's pride and joy. In the end, I got my car back, my revenge, and my peace of mind. Castor? He got what he deserved. And I have no regrets.